All right. Hello, world.
Charades. Oh,
No worries. Hello, world. Podlayer team is back at it again. Right now we're doing track 2 voicing parts of the practitioner program. That's basically where we take the entirety of the theory, break it up into themed areas, and then all those areas have the major principles put into individual pithy beats, which is basically what we focus on in the voicing training. So I am Naiji coach, got Naiji's Ben and Glenn. Mitchell and I will be doing one-on-one tomorrow. Background is Jailene. Shh, please stay very, very quiet. No, it's like we're observing a Kirin in the wild. All right, so we are now several levels in, you guys, and the theme section is Mojo reading, and we're pretty deep into it. We're now on to charading. All right, Ben, start with you here. What is charading? How does it relate to natural and altered states?
charading refers to when a person describes things or acts them out. This is on the connected ideas and related concepts rather than an exact explanation or enactment, which indicates interpretive power use. Interpretive mojos have natural state charading, and literal mojos have altered state charading. By the way, I think there might be something up with the C in charading at the start of the paragraph. I don't know exactly what it is.
Looks fine in mine.
I'm not sure.
It looks okay.
Does it look funny to you, Glenn, at all? The C in charading at the start of the paragraph? Maybe it's just like a bug that's just on my end, but like if I compare it to the C in the following paragraph in concretizing, it looks completely different. I'm not sure.
Okay, mine's the same. How about you, Glenn? Is Glenn frozen? Oh, I think Glenn's frozen.
Oh, I see.
I thought he was just staring, but he's actually frozen.
Oh, okay, never mind. It was just a bug on my end. For some reason, like, sometimes things like that happen, where something will just, like, randomly be, on your computer, will just randomly be slightly off. It's interesting. Because, like, it usually, like,
Hey there, guys. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yep.
Yeah, I was just saying the C in charading looked fine to me.
Yeah, I just found out after you, while you were off, I just found out it was just a bug on my end. I'm not sure why. Like for some reason, screen at first the C looked slightly distorted, but I scrolled down and I scrolled back up to the same area and it looked fine again. So I'm guessing it was just like some minor bug that happened.
Are you sure that it wasn't maybe a real bug that was on your screen?
Could have been. You never know.
Never know.
I don't even know, like, why did they even call them bugs? I think I do know. It's because, like, they're things that are annoying and you just want to squash them, I guess. I don't know.
Exactly, yeah.
All right, so
stop bugging me.
Oh, and the way it works is, like, you kill one bug, but then you find another one, you have to kill that bug. Then you find another one, you have to kill that bug. Because like you don't see them all at first, but like the process of killing bugs, more start showing up, and that's annoying.
I can see as a programmer there, Ben, you feel passionately on this subject.
I do.
That's awesome. All right, but charading.
Oh yeah. I love how you like moved to the next topic, and it took me like 5 seconds more to make that transition. I was just sort of like staring in space.
No worries.
So charading is like the game, right, that people play. It's sort of similar to that in that people will try to like describe the thing that they're trying to talk about, but through like
you because you're not allowed to speak it, and also you're not allowed to actually like point at it directly. Like, you know what I mean? Just like go run off and take a picture of what's being talked about, then run back and show them the picture. Those are two things that are generally not allowed. You can't speak, and you have to kind of use what is around you, and usually what you're talking about is not in the room. So because of that, you have to give impressions. That leads to the interpretive powers being used, because you have to kind of like try to use a tabletop, knick-knack, and do something with it, pantomime something with it, so that they get you're talking about the Avengers movie. Do something about your pants that makes them look like they're superhero pants. What would that be? Who knows? But the Neds will just make something up, to make yourself look more like Spider-Man or more like Thor, so oh, he's talking about the Avengers, right? That's how charading works.
Right. So it's sort of like a tool that interpretives use typically. Well, it's a natural state for interpreters, but literals use it as well in order to sort of like get across an idea more effectively, right? Basically.
We'll get the idea across when you're not using details. Charade specifically you can't point to it directly, and you can't speak. That would be the more direct, detailed way of actually doing it in that case. Does that make sense?
Right. Like,
for example, I'll tell you like a charading you'll see a lot. Comedians, stand-up comedians, they'll say something funny, and then they'll do something with their body language, their hands, to kind of get you in the headspace of the scene they're in when this action takes place they're making fun of, right? They'll do little kind of gyrations, and the crowd, if the comedian is good, the crowd kind of is there with them. So basically making a there out of nothing, like a stage, there's literally nothing to use at all. There's no props. There's just you. And so you do various things, you charade, to give the impression that you're in a small box, in a hospital, ward. You know what I mean? You pantomime, you charade it. Does that make sense? But you actually, obviously, you can't do anything real. You can't do anything specific or real
because you don't want to, or because you can't do that.
In case of charades, literally, you're not allowed. That's the game. But often in life, for example, comedy not allowed. I mean, you could, but it's called being on the nose, and that's generally a bad thing in comedy. Comedy, you're not supposed to be on the nose. You're supposed to make your point by making another point. Like you're talking about like Twinkies with sex, but really you're talking about violence in the ghetto. And if you can do that, and people go, "Ha, he's right," you giggle. You do. So it's making those connections. Does that make sense?
Kind of does. I'm still not 100% clear on it. I think maybe some like actual examples. Like, I know I've watched like Dave Chappelle and stuff. Like, is there a particular joke that maybe he's used, or a particular joke that another comedian has used?
Uses it all the time. For example, the voices he makes up is kind of a form of charading. In that, I mean, the game charades, you don't make sounds, but actually in the larger context, what you mean, he's actually doing something that clearly indicates he's using second conversation maneuvers. Automatically, it doesn't matter if you're a literal or a interpretive. If you are acting out a scene and pretending to be somebody you're not, you're going to be charading.
Right. So like you don't announce that you're going to be. No, I get it. Let me try to explain it.
Gotcha.
And you can tell me if I'm right or wrong. But like, if you're going to do an impression of somebody, you just go into the impression, and then people will understand. Oh, he's doing the impression of that person, and it's kind of like a little bit, dramatized in order to make it seem more funny than it really is. Like make it a little bit more off than the way that person actually sounds. Or maybe it is exactly like the way the person sounds, in which case it's funny because it's so realistic, right? Sort of like that.
Right.
It wouldn't make sense for them to be like, yeah, I'm going to do a Shaquille O'Neal impression, and then, like, I don't know, it would kind of take away from the ability of the joke. I
sort of focus overly on the impression part, although that's one aspect of it. But it's overall communicating with sort of like organic symbolism. For example, even if you look at, say, Navy SEALs, all right, they got a whole bunch of specific hand signs they do, very rather elaborate in some ways, to have a nonverbal communication between their squads as they do their things. Okay, make sense? All right, that's gonna be concretizing. That means that. That means that. This, whatever they're doing, that means things. But there's
like baseball players where they have the signs and stuff, right? Yeah.
Right. Okay. So that's specific. That's a language. Now,
Right.
I use that because it's in the middle. A more elaborate language allows for more concretizing, which is the next cue coming up. But right there with those hand signs, you can see on the other side of it, there's a lot of room for interpretation and a lot of things it won't directly cover. So let's say you got the Navy SEALs out doing their thing, and then something comes up, life. But it's something that none of the hand signs actually directly address. They'll have to make up hand signs. Like maybe there's a hand sign like this, but this is some weird stuff. So they take it and the person says like, they give a thing like, are you saying it's this? But they're like, no, it's like this. That's not even a sign. This isn't even a sign. They're making that sign up because it's kind of like this, except it's a freaking zombie or whatever. But like, yeah, well, I've never seen what that is before. And so you try to approximate. So
right, so it's an improvisation kind of technique, right?
Well, it can be also thought out. So it doesn't have to be adaptive in nature. The main thing is that you're not actually going to be speaking or doing it directly or focusing on a fine point. So let's actually take, for example, like the hand signs. You can get to the more specific uses of it and the exactness of it. And that's getting into the concretizing. The more you're talking about the gaps in between the accepted signs, there's going to actually be getting more specific on the accepted signs. That's concretizing. And then there's going to be interpreting them and trying to communicate with others an intangible, a current intangible. You're like, you know, it's kind of like he's like this, and it's sort of like, you know, little things like that. They can help jump the person in. Does that make sense?
Oh, okay. So you're trying to concretize in a way, but you're using charading in an attempt to sort of like get across the idea.
Well, no, I'll change the wording here, but I think you're on the right track. Concretizing and charading are actually opposite sides of the dichotomy. Let's give the dichotomy a name. I think you were going for there. This is basically trying to communicate perception within language or expression. So like if you have more interpret powers, you'll see like say Daiji, even we're using our V, there's a way you talk and a way you touch things in the environment that accentuates the claws of the bear, the smell of the tree. Do you mean you are on the story, you're emphasizing, you're actually taking certain I say visceral qualities and you're accentuating them, you're highlighting them. And so this can be done in speech. It can also be done simply with body language as you're telling a story on those words that actually are adjectives for something literal. There's adjectives for sweet. It's kind of V. Do you mean? There's adjectives for steady. It's kind of vibe. And so when they do that, they actually give their voice more energy or their hands do certain things, and it highlights that for the person they're communicating to.
Right, like trying to describe something that is an experience that can only really be understood as an experience. So you're trying to get across that experience through a communication style, and that is going to be charading.
No,
like,
actually,
it tastes like this, or like it tastes sweet, and then you kind of like, I don't know. Is that?
No, it's actually I think you combine two things there. In the concretizing, they're going to be using the veg channel, the literal powers, and they're going to be focusing on, for example, if you are doing anything physically experiential, a really getting into it. As simple as that. That's concretizing it. Getting more into the V that is concretized the situation. We were all splashed around the water, but you're like really getting into it. It highlights the water. Does that make sense?
Right.
So the Nez is actually coming in, and it's going to be trying to get an idea across. And so not anything specific. It's trying to actually get either like an idea or a gist. And so
like what would be the example of that?
Okay, like in comedy, a lot of times they'll be like, there's this guy, he's kind of like this. In one sentence fragment, often they'll do what I just did there. They won't even say it. They'll go, a guy kind of like this. They'll be like, nah. And that's supposed to tell you that guy, the archetype of that guy. That guy, we've all met that guy before, and they'll quickly give the crowd that guy. But not specifically, not like John Smith, who's down the street at that hotel, not specifically anyone. It's an archetype. It's a general idea of that kind of person. And then they'll make a scenario. So, I'm feeling a little, what does that mean? It's kind of vague, but it does get the mood across. Like, okay, so that's the person you're meeting, that kind of person, and you're in that kind of mood. Both those are rather loose.
Generalized kind of like things that don't have any specific...
The advantage is you can do it quickly because it takes less details, and this is why the comedians tend to have Nez. It allows for a wider audience to get into the story.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The more concretized it is, that's awesome too, but it's a more narrow audience that will appreciate that.
Right. I think I get it now.
All right. Cool.
I'm sorry if that was took up too much time.
No, this is a nuanced concept, and it's not one that we have done a lot with in the Mojo region compared to some of the other signals. I'm actually enjoying this because I want to highlight some more of these going forward, and knowing that you guys know it, I'll be like, boom, let's kind of jump right into that language.
Mm-hmm.
So charading refers to when a person describes things or describes something or acts it out with a focus on relating to conceptual ideas rather than the concrete and specific. Interpretives have natural state charading, and literal mojos have altered state charading.
Cool. Glenn?
Right, just one sec. Right, so charading refers to trying to basically act something out, an idea of some kind, in order to sort of like get across the idea or a related idea. And it's different in that it's not trying to actually get across exact information or anything like that. And so like a kind of mood or something that people can understand and relate to, that or an idea that gets across a general kind of conceptualization. When it comes to interpretives, they have natural state charading, and then literals have altered state charading. Is that good?
Yep. Next up will be you, Glenn, which is concretizing. So kind of cover that a little bit.
All right, so concretizing refers to when a person describes things or acts them out, where the emphasis is on the exact information or enactment, rather than on connected ideas and related concepts, which indicates literal power use. Literal mojos have natural state concretizing, and interpretive mojos have altered state concretizing. Right, so concretizing refers to when a person tries to act things out or get across an idea that is exactly what it is that they're trying to get across. So, for example, sign language or words that mean exactly what they are, definitions are, as far as like dictionary definitions go. They're trying to get across those kinds of ideas. When it comes to literals, they have natural state concretizing, and interpretatives have altered state concretizing.
Good. Ben?
Right, so concretizing refers to when a person describes something or acts something out, but with a focus on the concrete and specific as opposed to relating to patterns or connected ideas. And this has to do with literal power use. Literal mojos have natural state concretizing, and interpretive mojos have altered state concretizing.
Good. All right. Ben, what is a mode of range? What are its major demarcations?
Mode of range refers to how far a person's emotive expression easily and readily radiates out and up from the mouth area into the rest of the face. The major demarcations that are used in motoring are lip line, midline, brim line, and brow line. So is that the entire beat, or should I go into describing all of them?
No, that's it. That comes in there.
That makes sense. So what is a demarcation? Is that just like a segment of the face, or is that like
basically to be marked out. So
okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, so we kind of like we make a mark in our mind's eye. We make a mark of that on the face, like a little dotted lines, and kind of note where things are going.
Nice. So emotive range refers to how far a person's emotive expression readily goes out from a person's mouth and up their face. The major demarcations of a person's emotive range are the lip line, midline, brim line, and brow line.
Yep.
Right, you got it.
Yep.
Glenn?
I almost forgot about brow line. I was like, for a second, I was just like, good.
Yeah. All right. So emotive range refers to the emotive quality that a person gives off whenever they're dialoguing with another person, or just like as a physiological cue, and it depends on their mojo and what mojo they are, how far up it goes up the face. So it can either go all the way up to the brow line, it can go up to the brim line, the midline, or it could be localized in just the lip line area.
Cool. Nice. Glenn, go ahead and get a little more detail here. What is the lip line, the midline, brim line, and brow line? Break it down.
So I think I might be able to just do the beat. Let me just read it a little bit. I'm noticing midline is in italics. Is that because we covered it before?
Let me see. Yeah. But go on, let's do it again.
Sure.
As part of this set.
So they all extend across the face. It's just there's like little ceilings that are.
Yeah. If you want, you could probably preface it by saying that all of these extend across the face, but they
right. That'll save me having to explain.
Vertically, they happen at different areas.
All right. So when it comes to all of the various emotive spectrums, they extend across the face in a horizontal fashion. But when it comes to the lip line, the vertical aspect of it, the y-axis, it stops at the lip, the lip line, the upper lip, and it's localized within that area. The midline goes up further than that. It stops right below the nose area, or around the cheekbone area here, and it doesn't go past that. Usually, the mojos that the base of the cheekbones, basically, and usually mojos that have that have the emoting stop here, especially the Nizai and the Vizai, they tend to have like a sharky quality to their smile. It goes quite to the left and right, and it creates a big smile. Anyways, the brim line goes all the way up to the bottom of the eyelids. It goes all the way up, but not into the eyes, and that's to distinguish the fact that they're perception lead mojos. And then finally, the brow line goes all the way up into the brow area and connects the entire face, basically, and creates this look called the unifield face. The emoting goes into the eyes, or the neutralizing as well.
Cool. Ben.
All right. So all of the moment demarcations, they go across the face horizontally, but vertically the lip line, it effectively starts at the upper lip, and then, well, actually it goes, basically the mowing goes up to the upper lip, so that would be the lip line area. And then you have the midline, which is which is like lower cheeks is the midline, and you'll find that the cutoff is like somewhere around here, and then you have the brim line, which is just basically right eyes, and the cutoff is like somewhere around here for the emoting, and then you have the brim line, which is the brow line, which is the upper eyebrows is where the cutoff is. So, for example, Jez Alpha will have their mowing go all the way up to the brim line, so all the way up to this area.
Does it stop at just the brow line, or does it go into the forehead and past as well?
Yeah, obviously it does. It goes in there too, but that's where kind of like basically, if you see it go past up to the eyebrow and past, you're like, okay, that is in that range.
That's enough, right? There's not like a Jez super mojo that has to go up higher into the back of the neck.
Yeah, it's I think I guess what happens is the energy is just sort of like, there's sort of a gray area where it's like it just starts to dissipate, I guess, from there. It's like the signal becomes less and less pronounced the further past the eyebrows you get.
I think also in distinguishing, like, you really only need to say that it goes past the eyebrows in order for the person to understand that, oh yeah, this person is probably going to be, a discernment lead mojo.
Gotcha.
And they're going to probably be
because I mean the most pronounced signal you're going to see in distinguishing between the emoting of a G alpha with an IG is going to be in the eyes. So if you're looking in the general areas of the eyes and a bit above it, like even up here, it's like you don't really need to go. If you go any further, I mean, the signal it's not going to be as pronounced as it is in the eyes anyway. So,
if it goes into the eyes, it's sort of like you don't need to check beyond that because you already pretty much know. And you could just kind of look at other cues.
You also
it doesn't really help you because it's not.
You'll see a crinkling of the forehead that even logic-based mojos can do, and I think it's separate than the energy that comes and radiates from the mouth. Do you know what I mean? And so it's the fine fascia around the eye and eyebrow area that kind of really like, I think you guys are saying it too, like whenever we see like a Jinai or Johnny, for example, like, oh, I think I'm seeing that crinkling around the eye. The eye crinkle, I think, is more indicative than the squinching of the forehead. Because sometimes the squinch of the forehead almost is like its own thing. See, I'm doing this. My mouth's not doing much though. But there's that expression that's coming from my mouth and then hitting, and see kind of tops in the eyebrows. There's not a lot going on the forehead, but I can do a lot on my forehead like this. But it's actually
it seems to
almost like a hood.
Yeah, I honestly think the forehead might it may even have more to do with, like, could it possibly even have more to do with like
perception?
Yeah, maybe perception possibly, because like if you move these muscles, like your eyebrows, a brow lift, for example, has been associated with, stimulus register power, like, and then it goes like that, when you're smiling, that might have been V, couldn't it have been? Like, because your eyes were moving up, your eyebrows were moving up, so it was kind of.
This is a fine distinction. That's a very good point. That I think is a good idea of why
like a squint is kind of like this look, right?
Right.
Exactly. And all those are perception movers, and you'll see when he's doing them. There's not much going on with the mouth.
Yeah.
As compared to like, haha, You like this? And like, oh, you know what I mean? Where the mouth generates energy and it kind of like rushes up the face and lifts everything. That's a different kind of spectrum, I think.
That's a different kind of pattern, right? That gets
And when I see
yeah.
Jez Alpha doing it, I usually focus on like that whoosh, like it goes from the mouth, ripples up the face, and it ripples upwards here. These other maneuvers, like he was doing, Ben was doing, they don't feel like they're rippling upwards from the mouth area. They feel like they're actually starting up there.
Yeah.
Right. It really has to follow through the peak pathway, right? Like you can't fake those kinds of cues when they happen. They just kind of happen naturally. You can sort of like try to act out certain expressions and stuff, but that's not the same thing. That's you basically pretending to sort of like, get across those kinds of ideas. But even then, you still can't help but be the Mojo that you are. So you're going to,
right?
Yeah.
Wait a minute. I think I understood that. All right.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
It's all good. Okay, so Ben, are you ready? What is values-based emoting? How does it relate to the midline of the face?
Cool. Values-based emoting refers to when values-based mojos use their values-based power, which is momentum for them. Therefore, their move range goes easily and readily above the midline of the face. So values-based emoting refers to when values-based mojos use their values-based power. Basically, when they use their values-based power, which is momentum for them. Therefore, their emoting goes easily and readily above the midline of the face.
Cool. Glenn?
Right. So values-based emoting refers to when a values-based mojo will use their values-based power, which is momentum for them, and it's going to go easily and readily above the midline of the face.
All right. Now, do the same thing with logic-based emoting.
Which refers to when logic-based mojos use their values-based power, which is modulation for them. Therefore, their emotive range does not go easily and readily above the midline of the face. So logic-based emoting refers to when a logic-based mojo uses their values-based power, which is not going to be momentum for them. It's going to be modulation. And when they use it, it's going to not go up their face readily and easily. And it's going to stay within the midline or below the midline of the face.
Good.
So logic-based emoting refers to when a logic-based mojo uses their values-based power, which is modulation for them. Therefore, their emotive range does not go easily and readily above the midline of the face.
Right. What is logic-based neutralizing? What is values-based neutralizing?
That's your cue, Ben.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Localized emoting. Oh, no, never mind. We're on neutralizing. Logic-based neutralizing refers to when logic-based mojos use their logic-based power, which is momentum for them. Therefore, the cessation of a mode's expression is immediate and the curtaining fully settled.
Oh,
Values-based
are we doing logic-based neutralizing or emoting? I'm not sure.
Neutralizing.
Okay, gotcha. Did we skip the emoting? high range emoting and localized?
No, we did that.
No, we didn't. I don't think we did values-based emoting and logic-based emoting, but we didn't do localized emoting and high-range emoting.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Thank you. Okay.
But are we on logic-based neutralizing and values-based neutralizing right now?
I think I missed that in my review questions. Oh, I see. Okay. Oh no, I got it here. Okay, so what is localized emoting? What is high range emoting?
Oh, both at the same time.
Yeah, that's how it's written. Isn't that how it's written in yours?
No, they're both like values-based emoting in the PDF file and logic-based emoting. They're separate beats, but localized emoting and high-range emoting are also separate beats. But
Sure, right?
if it's fine. I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter. We can do both at the same time.
Yeah. It doesn't contain the same structures like as the values-based emoting, logic-based emoting, because those were each individual, whereas these are grouped together. But I think it's fine to do it either way. But anyway, so localized emoting refers to more pronounced form of logic-based emoting, where the emotive range does not go easily and readily above the lip line. It indicates a person who has a logic-based power. A person who has a logic-based power as their source power. Maybe indicates that a person. Wait.
Which one are you, localized or high range?
Localized.
Oh, I'm on localized. I'm just looking at the grammar. Localized refers to more pronounced for logic, where the emotive range is either really above the middle. It indicates a person who. Maybe we can remove. Can we remove the word who as opposed to? Yeah, just remove the word who, because it indicates a person has a logic-based power as their source power. But if you say indicates a person who has a logic-based power as their source power, it's like the who kind of.
What about indicates that a person?
It seems like when we use the word who, it usually means like it's usually attached to someone. Like this is a person who's like this. Whereas this is basically saying an objective fact about it. So it's like saying it indicates a person has logic-based power as their source power.
But the who could be the group, can it?
Right.
Like it would make sense like if you said it indicates that this is a person who has a logic-based power as their source power, but there's no reference here. There's no reference to the person. It's just
Okay.
Well, it's just saying like a direct fact. So I think the who isn't.
Okay. It sounded okay to my ear, but if it bothers yours, it's fine. I can adjust it here. So we'll go indicates that a person has. Do you like that? And indicates that a person has a logical power. Yeah. Ben?
I think
The who I took out.
Yeah, I think that's fine. Indicates that person has a.
Or should they
Yeah,
that
makes sense. Yeah, that
should
makes
be
sense.
That, that should the a be a the and indicates that the person has.
Indicates that. I think either way is fine. A or the is fine.
Okay.
The who just kind of a person who like the who doesn't. It definitely doesn't add anything to the sentence. I'm not sure like if it's incorrect or not, but it's like I don't know.
I think it does actually add, but if it sounds off the ear, that's fine because it indicates a person who has, right? So it's like making them like a quantity in your mind.
So who has what though?
You know what I'm noticing in the previous two beats, it refers to Mojo, logic-based mojos, values-based mojos. Maybe in localized emoting, we should also follow along with that logic by saying logic-based mojos.
No.
No?
Because it's more specific than that. localized emoting is referring to actually,
I think who might actually be grammatically incorrect. I can't exactly articulate why.
and that's why I've already changed it to that. But when I did that, it did change it slightly. So I'm trying to make sure that actually gets the idea across. So it indicates that a person has.
Yeah, I think that is fine.
All right, cool. All right, so we're good.
You could also just remove who, and it would probably be better. Like if you just said, if you didn't add that and just removed who, you could say, and indicates a person has a logic-based power as their source power. Either way is fine though.
All right. I'll just go with the other. All right, we're good.
That sounds good. So localized emoting refers to the more pronounced form of. Okay, yeah. I'll just reread it because we spent a long time. Localized emoting refers to the more pronounced form of logic-based emoting where the mode range does not go easily or readily above the lip line and indicates a person has a logic-based power as their source power. High-range emoting refers to the more pronounced form of values-based emoting where the emotive range goes easily and readily above the entire face. Rally up the entire face to the brow line indicates a person has a values-based power as their source power. So localized moding refers to a more pronounced version of logic-based emoting such that the emoting does not go easily and readily above the lip line of the face as opposed to, so it doesn't even reach the midline at all. So, and you see that in Mojos who have a logic-based power as their source power. High-range emoting is a more pronounced version of values-based emoting. And that's when the emoting it not only goes above the midline, but it also goes all the way up to the brow line. And you'll see that in Mojos that have a values-based power as their source power.
Good, Glenn.
All right, so localized emoting refers to a more pronounced form of logic-based emoting where the emoting will not even go up to the midline of the face, but will stop at the lip line of the face, which indicates that the person who is using their values-based power has that values-based power as their polar power, and which also means that they have a logic-based power as their source. High-range emoting refers to a type of emoting that distinguishes it, a more pronounced form of values-based emoting where the emoting will go all the way up to the brow line of the face when they use their values-based power, and it's indicative of a person who is a values-based mojo, but not just a values-based mojo, they have a values-based power as their source power.
Cool. All right, so next up, Glenn, is what is logic-based neutralizing? What is values-based neutralizing?
All right, so logic-based neutralizing refers to when logic-based mojos use their logic-based power, which is momentum for them. Therefore, the cessation of emotive expression is immediate and the curtaining fully settled. Values-based neutralizing refers to when values-based mojos use their logic-based power, which is modulation for them. Therefore, the cessation of emotive expression has a slight delay and the curtaining is never fully settled. All right, so logic-based neutralizing refers to when a logic-based mojo will use their logic-based power, which will halt or cessate the emoting that they're using or that they were using, and it will be dramatic and very quick and easy for them, and the curtaining effect will be fully settled. When it comes to values-based neutralizing, that refers to when a values-based mojo will use their logic-based power, and when they do so, it's going to cause because it's modulation for them, it's not going to be as quick and readily of a curtaining effect, and also the curtaining is not going to be fully settled.
Good. Ben?
All right. So logic-based neutralizing refers to when a logic-based mojo uses their logic-based power, which is momentum for them. And what this does is that because this is momentum, the curtaining effect is immediate, and it becomes fully settled. And then values-based neutralizing is when a values-based mojo accesses their logic-based power, which is modulation for them. And then you see this neutralizing, this curtaining effect. It has a bit of a delay to it because it's a bit slower to come on, and it's never fully settled. The motive power is you can very easily see it's
Still idling.
Yeah.
It's still peeking through, trying to, because it wants to come up, but the neutralizing is you're trying to use the neutralizing power to like clamp it down, but it's like impossible because the person's a values-based mojo.
Yeah.
Can't be,
Yeah, it keeps
there's always going to be a tone, basically, right?
Yeah, and it's going to be like if that tone has an urge to want to move out of the mouth there, and you're like, no, but you have to keep like telling it no consciously, because if you don't, it has a mind of, the momentum powers have a mind of their own. If you don't directly curb them with modulation, they're going to just start idling forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so next up is, did both of you guys go on that one?
Yeah, we both did that one.
Okay. So then next up is, what are audible cues? What can be heard in audible cues? And what are audible emotive thresholds?
See you, Ben.
All right. Audible cues refers to all cues that relate to power usage that are heard rather than seen. The subtle aesthetic quality of each of a person's four conscious powers can be heard in the voice, as can the nuanced degrees of motive range. Audible motive thresholds refers to the audible versions of the lip line, midline, brim line, and brow line. Instead of the motive expression spreading across the person's face, it is spread across their vocal range.
Well, that's interesting. Do each of those have a certain name to them?
No,
like
other
the lip
than
line?
If I was to give it one, since it's not actually a face, I'd probably say something like the audible, say like the quarter line, the halfway line, the three-quarter line, and the full.
Yeah.
Because you can kind of hear, like, that mid, and you can hear the logic-based mojos. It comes up, but there's not a full giving over to it that happens with the jazz when they do that. The jazz will actually go above it. If I just give it a thing, it's almost like, the center axis line in a visual way. It's almost like the audible spectrum has like a center line, and whether or not you go above that, like a quarter, half, three-quarters, or full.
Yeah, it's sort of like there's different, like in music and sounds and stuff, there's like frequencies and amplitudes and stuff like that. Then you can add in, what do you call it, the center, what do you call it, the
right.
you were referring to, yeah.
I guess you say like, I guess the really it's called the emotive the audible emotive spectrum? Would it be the, I guess the midline of the range instead of midline of the face? Because in this case, the face is the range. So there it's more abstract. It would just be the midline of the audible range. That sounds good. Midline of the audible range. Or the audible emotive range. Midline of the audible emotive. God, that's a tongue twister, isn't it? But yeah, I think that's what it is. There's just no physical object to reference. You have to kind of reference it conceptually.
The MAR, right? The midline audible range.
That's a little faster.
Yeah. Maybe we'll be able to like see the range as far as like on like on a computer. Like, oh, I can see the peaks and valleys. It has a certain kind of pattern to it.
I mean, we hear it, so I think so. It's like a sensitive instrument, but I think yeah.
Yeah, that'll be interesting.
Yeah.
I think it'll be like all thing that's Mojo. It's going to be a very complicated thing, but yeah.
It's like it's going to be like
really observe extremely subtle.
Because like for us, there, like as instruments, there's like so many things that can like throw us off. But then you take like a less complicated instrument that's just taking like raw data on like vocal ranges and so forth, and it's like, I don't know, it's probably gonna be pretty tough, but it'd be really cool if we can actually do that.
It would.
Yeah.
I hope though, because we hear it, so it's kind of like the eyes, how we read Mojo. I'm sure there's gonna be some sort of visual scan they'll do it eventually, because I mean, our eyes are a camera lens. So we're
I mean, there's got to be like some way to measure it.
Yeah, so you should have
it's
the
gonna be
right,
interesting.
the right lens.
Like, because like the tools like we use now to like wavelengths and stuff. Like I'm sure that like we can probably figure that out eventually if we have a sophisticated enough understanding of how it works.
It takes
yeah.
I think it'll also add a lot as far as like if we're able to program a computer that can do that, then that shows also at the same time that we also understand the phenomenon that much better too. And maybe we're still trying to understand the phenomenon. I think we still are. We always are. We're still trying to grasp in totality what the phenomenon is in the first place.
Organic intuition, if you try to discover how blood works, but then you also do like physical experiments on the blood. And a lot of times there will be machines you can create that can tell you stuff way better than a human senses and operating systems.
Yeah, like I wonder, can we make a data program that's even better?
You need that kind of
yeah, because like
data mirror.
Like I guess in a lot of cases, I mean, it would be like, because in a lot of ways we are like better than like a machine might be, like when it comes to
that will change though.
Right, but at the same time, like when it comes to doing certain things, like it might be possible we could make a computer program that can identify someone's mojo better than humans can, like more consistently. Even
I think so. As a principal of Podler, I'm gonna advocate for humans to always train in mojo reading because it's a spiritual practice.
Yeah, and that's obviously like way above like what we're gonna be able to make computers do. But when it comes to just like
exactly, I do think they'll get to they can outdo human. For one thing, it is related to like a camera lens, so they're actually seeing it as well. So the question is, how much resolution? How much resolution does it take to track all those very subtle movements that we're tracking? And then once you have that, then they can keep going. You know what I mean? It's taken a while to get to where they match us, but they're getting better and better each year. But once they match us, they can keep going. And then critically, as a part of that, they can do it day in and day out. Machines, day in, day out, all the time, and not get tired of reading. They don't have the same fatigue.
Yeah, you like as soon as you have a program that can do that, I mean, you can literally read everyone on the internet. I mean, like, but once you get to the point like where with a single image, it gets to like 99% accuracy, you can basically just like read like every single image out there.
Because it's a program. It just does a task and then it'll do the task.
But for
Little,
humans,
you know,
I would obviously advocate that they learn to read Mojo for the personal development, because it really helps you to focus in a very spiritual and artistic way. But also, it's good as a regular lesson, even when the computers can actually like do it ahead of time, is to know, oh, the computers have read this week's Mojos. I want to guess on them and feel what it feels like to get corrected. That's a very good process. One thing that, for example, it generally is seen as being science and not so much in spirituality, but this would bridge it. But that's a very, to me, elevated practice that scientists have, and they often level it against, for example, faith-based models, which is you don't experience what it is to believe you are right with everything that you have, and then get data that shows you are wrong. And that's a vital process for seekers to go through on a regular basis. And the moment you stop, that muscle will atrophy. You have to constantly actually like go what you believe and then find a way to check yourself. With Podler Mojo reading, it's a very kind of personal, psychological, spiritual process to evaluate what the basic instrument another human is. Mm-hmm. So a lot of your biases will come out when you try to do that. So it's good to reach. And even the computers do it better than you, still good, because then you'll find out, my human lens was skewed, and that'll teach you what your skewing is. You have to constantly be like looking for that. It's essential for a seeker to be looking for data that will help get them less skewed.
And I think in practice, it's still useful to know how to read, because I mean there's a lot more to Mojoing than just like Mojo recognition. Because like, and also if you're in like a situation and you're out like in person, you know, and you see people, if you can read, you know, you're oftentimes not going to have a computer with you that can just like you're not going to like be oftentimes going to be able to have like a camera on you or like something that like a computer could like scan. Right. So in practice that'd be kind of weird. If people are doing that all the time. So yeah,
that's a good point.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of like when it comes to math, you learn, you know, how to be able to do addition, subtraction, multiplication, division up to a certain degree in order to really appreciate that there is a math to the way math works, the way numbers work, you know. And so learning how to do Mojo math is also important as well, in order to be able to crunch and then like figure out, okay, this person is this Mojo based on these variables and based on all this stuff. And yeah, but I mean, I really do like the idea of like having a sounding board, which is like a computer program that you can use in order to like figure out what the answers are that are correct. That'd be awesome. Yeah, like I mean, computers are designed to make human lives easier, and so that should definitely be.
Like I think how it might start out is like you might like what might happen is like if you know if like as soon as this is studied, as soon as like someone starts studying this, what might happen is we might find that there's certain patterns where like if you train a program to track certain patterns, like the percent accuracy of that computer program is going to increase. It's going to be higher, but it's not going to be like 100% at first. Like you're going to start to find certain things.
It's funny. We're going to teach the computers at first, and then the computers will teach us.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's like you'll start to sort of figure out certain things that are like that correlate with getting the right answer, but aren't like exactly right. Like we do with Mojoing. Like we find like we see certain signals, but like our lens is still pretty foggy, so we end up getting a lot of answers wrong, even though we're on it's the right idea. So computers, I think, are going to be the same way as we try and teach them how to read.
And this is also like you know, like computers being able to read visually, you know, a person's Mojo, but then we'll also at the same time, or at some kind of a point, in order to even go further in terms of proof of concept, you know, we can actually like take a DNA test. Like you put it in a computer.
I don't know exactly how specific those markers will be, but I'm very excited about that potentiality too, Glenn, because that'd be another kind of like, you know, very empirical, very easy to scale process. That would be great.
Yeah, that'd be really good for proof of concept too, because like then we've actually gone further than because like people like a lot of people like give us crap because, oh yeah, you're reading people's faces, but you don't know what's really going on inside them. But if we have a person's like DNA, it's like, okay, you have like, you don't even have like a shred of speculation anymore. You know what I mean?
No,
So
for sure.
That is, yeah.
Now, it's always a trick with
Yeah.
initial science, though, is you have to find what's that first way to get some proof. That'll be like we're doing, the fact you guys can see it, and then the sample sort program, and then larger groups, and then the face recognition, the DNA. All those will kind of like, because right now there's DNA on biological evolution that certain faith-based models are like, nah. They just shrug that off. No, I mean, so you always need more data because different people have different bars. You know what I mean? The cutting edge, like you guys pioneers, you're like, I can see it too. That's enough. Other people need no, I need hundreds of people to have seen it before me. Otherwise, I don't trust my own.
Yeah, it's like there's never enough evidence for them. You know what I mean?
I think we're not. I mean, we see it and we know that it's there, but even we want those things that we're striving to get in order to prove to ourselves. Because
Absolutely.
there's also as much as I would like to say that the Mojo phenomenon absolutely does exist, there are still things that we haven't done yet, and that once we get those things, then that's going to just make it even more airtight. And I look forward to feeling that feeling of being that airtight on something, which.
And that's why, for example, like the sample sort program, I'm so excited to get that. Is I want to find something that more people could play on and try to experiment, because the more people can see it independently, blind, double blind style, that would actually give me a lot more confidence. And then anything else that indicates, okay, this is happening independently. Anytime, like when you guys do riffing, when people are seeing things ahead of time and they automatically knew what the Mojo was before I told them, things like, it's like, okay, I think we're working on something that actually is a universal given, and we're trying to feel it out. So the more
matters.
Yeah, it is, and the more things that like validate, okay, this is new, but it's like a thing, and we're starting to touch its edges. We're feeling the shape of it. Yeah, it's very, very exciting.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it makes it feel that much more real, and that does definitely.
Important is this, which is going to have such implications to like the human soul and things like that. You notice that people's scientific evidence requirements for certain breakthroughs, like how to launch rockets or blow stuff up, they're like, okay, that blew up better than that blew up. I'm good. Here's my money. When you start saying like this new science actually says that we're related to monkeys, they're like, slow your roll. I'm going to need a lot more evidence than that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then suddenly we bury them in evidence and still doesn't matter. But that's just the way of it. You got to enjoy it.
It's like never enough. Like you can never, because like, I mean, it is true you could find more evidence, but like to convince these people no evidence, like there's never enough evidence. Like no matter how much you give them, they'll always say they want more.
Plus, as a jazz hunter, I just have to always believe that there's just over the horizon an extreme enough evidence ritual that'll do it. You know what I mean? Like there's a way, there's something even more hardcore than DNA, or you know what I mean? Like, or maybe like a DNA museum, a big museum, a super big museum, one in every city. Like, what would it take? I'm like, we'll build it. We'll figure it out.
You know what? You can approach it from a sort of perspective of like trying to convince the most extreme of person, but actually, the way that I see it is it's more like fun. You just keep learning more about like how the phenomenon can come out in the various different ways that it does, and then it just adds more to the pot because there's always infinite mystery, and it's like like science is a field where people are always constantly putting in new ideas, and then like it keeps becoming bigger and bigger, and we start learning more and more. But then at the same time, the more we know, the more questions we start asking based on trying to like guesswork our way into trying to understand other areas. And so, but the entire process is what's enjoyable,
For sure.
So It's always going to be there's always going to be the critic, but and the person who doesn't believe the evidence, but it becomes less and less and less and less and less, like smaller and smaller and smaller until eventually it's just sort of like, well, dude, I mean, the evidence is like significantly skewed.
At each of those degrees, there's a new, batch, a new echelon batch of seekers. They're like, that's enough. That's enough for me to see it.
Yeah, and like everything that we do is like you can't say 100% on anything, but there are laws that propagate certain kinds of ways of doing life, and like we don't we put people that do crimes in prison and stuff like that. Why? Because there's a reason for that, and there's a structure to the way things work, and there's a there's right and wrong. Basically, there is lots of shades of gray, but there is also at the same time shades, right? So there is a better way, there's a more correct way of living, and there are more right answers as compared to wrong answers, and so you have to acknowledge that.
It's true. So even though, the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know, but that doesn't mean you know less than you did before. It's very important. Right. It means that you realize that what you're studying is bigger, but you still know what you knew, and now you know more. It's just that taught you that it's a bigger ocean. People often confuse that principle. Actually, a lot, for example, like faith-based models, when they attack scientists, they criticize that doubt. It's like, oh, you say that the more you learn, the less you know. But that's because it's implied that I realize the game's bigger. I realize there's more going on than I thought, and so I changed my scale of how much of it I know. But if you just take like mass, I know more than I did before, and I know a whole lot more than you do.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, who's up?
I'm up. I haven't. I'm gonna have to keep reading though.
Audible cues.
Right. Audible cues and audible emotive thresholds.
Cool.
So audible cues refers to all of the cues that a person's powers give off that are heard rather than seen. That quality of each of a person's foreconscious powers can be heard in the voice, as well as a person's emoting and vocal range. The motive thresholds, audible motive thresholds, are basically the levels of emoting that they're the audible version of levels of emoting that you can see visually, such as the lip line, the midline, the brim line, the brow line, but they're audible. So so you hear them rather than see them.
Yeah, they're, instead of being spread across their facial range, it's spread across their vocal range, basically.
Yeah.
Who's up now? Did you already go, Glenn, or are you up next?
No, I'm up next.
He's up next.
Good.
Right, so audible cues refers to all of the audible cues of physiological cues that can be heard rather than being seen, that a person gives off whenever they speak or give off any sort of audible cues at all, basically. And you're able to read a person based on their audible cues, what powers are being consciously used, and you can also read their emotive expression as well, and how that falls and what range that falls in, which gets into the emotive, the audible emotive range, which refers to basically the lip line, brow line, midline, brow line, or lip line, midline, brim line and brow line of the facial cues that can be used to distinguish a person's emotive range as far as how far it goes up their face. This refers to the audible versions of those, which can be heard. So you're able to take note of their emotive expressioning in terms of their vocal range, and being able to read that and determining, where their values-based power falls in their conscious hierarchy, whether it's source, tandem, offside, or polar, basically. Yeah.
Cool. All right, go take lead this next one. What is characterizing? What does it usually indicate? How does it relate to natural and altered states?
Right, so characterizing refers to whenever a person is acting out an impression of someone else or themselves from another situation, as well as when personifying activities or objects. This usually coincides with values-based power usage, with values-based mojos having natural state characterizing and logic-based mojos having altered state characterizing. So this is different than charading in that you're not trying to get across a kind of like archetype idea conceptually. You're trying to actually do an impression of somebody specifically.
Yeah, to set
that sounds
to give a mood, because basically, if this helps, the concretizing and charading is a spectrum of interpretive to literal, a perception spectrum. Right. This is a discernment spectrum. It's between, this is going to be characterizing and enumerating. So characterizing is specifically that you're giving personality to what you're saying. Does that make sense? You're conveying it, not, so it's not idea based, it's personality based. You're trying to get the personality across, the mood and personality. So that's associated with jez.
Right. So yeah, an impression of someone else. What would be a good example of that? Like characterizing in the sense that you're trying to personify something?
For example, you'll see a lot of times, like both the Der Serb comedians do this quite a bit, where they will make a Z point, and then they will act out with their zhai the reaction shot of either themselves or the person they were interacting with.
Right. Or like if somebody, zhai is really good at like being able to like express, not necessarily in an unaware way, basically, because it's zhai, like, ooh, I like that, or I don't like that. Like they have that kind of feeling that they kind of express in that way, like. And then Mojos, they're good at, what do you call it, getting across a kind of character that they might be playing, right? Or like a certain kind of, like, in their voice, they might let the person know based on their emotiveness whether or not they agree or disagree, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
okay.
And also whether or not they consider the person they're talking about to be, virtuous or villainous. They can sort of imply that by the tone that they're giving things.
Right, the tone, right. Okay, gotcha.
Like, when Nigel, for example, does an impression of a person, they can make that person seem more likable, or unlikable, more friendly or unfriendly, and the audience will react to that character in the story by how it's been portrayed. The personality of that character has been portrayed by the storyteller.
Right. The kind of light that you put that person in, basically, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, I really love soccer. I love to play the way that you kick the ball, blah, blah, blah. They romanticize it, right, in that kind of way. Or they can be like, soccer. I hate soccer. I gotcha. Okay. So characterizing refers to whenever a person personifies another person, or maybe perhaps themselves from a different time or place, or they may even personify an activity or an object, and it takes use of their jez power in order to do that. When it comes to values-based mojos, they have natural state characterizing, and logic-based mojos have altered state characterizing.
Good. Ben?
All right. So characterizing refers to whenever a person acts out themselves or someone else from a particular situation, and is effectively and that corresponds with their values-based power. So it means they're activating their values-based power, and values-based mojos have natural state characterizing, and logic-based mojos have altered state characterizing.
Boom. All right, so you take the lead in this one here, which is the counterpoint. What is numerating? What does it usually indicate? How does it relate to natural and altered states?
Numerating refers to whenever a person is explaining the numeric or logical sequence of an activity or methodology, as well as when breaking things down into systemic categories. This usually coincides with logic-based power usage, with logic-based mojos having natural state numerating and values-based mojos having altered state numerating.
Right, this one makes sense too, I think. You're just trying to explain the logical sequencing of a certain activity or how something works. Like physics professors, they do a lot of numerating in order to get across the ideas that are related to the subject matter within the course material and stuff like that, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. And really any field where the person, it can even be like, say, history or literature, where they're like, okay, and here are the principles of a drama. It takes this, it takes this, it takes this, it takes this. That doing it like that, you know what I mean?
You have grammar rules, which are basically like logical principles that you follow when structuring language. And
so whenever you're talking about the rules and regs of anything, it can even be something like fluffy. You know what I mean? Like Pokemon. I like Pokemon. Yes, but how does it work that you go from one Pokemon to the other? Well, that works like this. First is this, 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 and when that's enumerating, no matter where you are.
Yeah. I think I've done a lot of enumerating in my day.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Well, Zai is very good for taking things, because Xi doesn't naturally enumerate, but Zai can actually go into what Xi's doing and find things to enumerate, and it's very good at it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It takes also a lot of skill in being able to use characterizing and numerating at the same time to sort of like get across good character and being able to read another person what they see and what they don't see, and then get across the conceptual idea and the logical stuff to them in a way that they understand best, and kind of like clicks into place, like, yes, I see what you're saying, and now let's geek out together for like half an hour. That kind of thing.
Well, yeah, the two are definitely related. Actually, they're happening simultaneously in Synomnia. The dichotomy between characterizing and enumerating combined.
Yeah, it's sort of like on a.
I was in simultaneously the characterized and enumerating is working together with the charading and concretizing.
Right.
Yeah, it's sort of like on a spectrum. Like you're spending, like you might describe something that involved in such a way that involves more numerating, but there's usually like, there's always like a characterizing to it to some degree. Of the activity, because like you're expressing your thought on something, and there's always like a motive, like an emotive character to how you're doing it, I guess.
Yeah, none of the powers exist within a vacuum, right? They're always being informed by all the other powers.
But there's times where they kind of like take more of an assertive role or a frontal role.
Yeah.
And so these kind of things like numerating and characterizing, they tend to coincide with when it's taking a more forward role in a
there's more of an emphasis on one power or like two powers or three powers, but all powers are constantly being used to some degree. But yeah, definitely otherwise we wouldn't be able to have these distinctions of characterizing, enumerating if there wasn't an emphasis on, certain activities taking more prevalence and priority as compared to others. So yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting on that. Like when I'm teaching myself something, like say it's math or programming, I always teach it to myself in like basically the simplest way possible, like the most logically simple way possible. And I think that may have to do with like characterizing and enumerating, because I'm basically I'm trying to it's more like not enumerating like as much as I need to be. Like it might be a very complex topic, but there's also like basically requiring as few logical steps as possible in order to understand a concept. And I typically like to take that route whenever I'm learning something. So I feel like when it comes to expressing, I'm kind of the same way. I always start from basically is as simple of a, like, as least logically complex as I can. And that's typically how I prefer to do things, because it allows for more characterizing. It allows, I guess, from my perspective, to be more understandable.
Yeah, because that feels, with G being momentum, it feels easier, more powerful to convey the message that way. Yeah. And then it says, enumerating, for example, as would bonus stack that, but not as the lead. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, it's sort of like when you're teaching somebody something, like it's you want to be very relatable to a person, because you're trying to sort of transmit the idea, to that other person. So it seems like, to teach someone, you definitely need both. But there's sort of like a push and pull between like going to like more logical complexity and less logical complexity.
Well, I don't think
wonder if there's.
Well, I feel like I want to say, like, I don't think that it has to be like a competing quality to it. Like, oh, I'm being nice to this person, and then here I am being really logical and trying to explain things. You can kind of like do both at the same time, where your tone is positive and you're trying to get across the idea in that kind of positive way.
Yeah, I think we're kind of combining two discussions here. We're kind of combining peak pathway usage in general, long-term, and more of like also larger motifs. And here, characterizing and enumerating is in the context of mode reading cue. So, for example, what you're talking about, guys, is sort of like how would you approach teaching a class, and that's true. But this is more like a moment-to-moment, like, ba 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 ba, right there. Okay, that person enumerated right then. Oh, yeah. They active. So these in this theme.
Yeah, it's not. We're sort of talking about like broader themes
compared to peak pathway strategy.
Yeah, this seems to be just a specific concept. We're talking about like broader themes that have to do with it, which I think are worthy discussions.
Oh, yeah, they're very much related, for sure.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, these are cues that could be kind of called out within the span of just a few moments.
Right. If you're able to understand the concept, then you're able to see it as a physiological cue being manifesting on another person. So, yeah, I think what we're trying to do is internalize and understand the concept in the best way possible. In order to kind of like,
naturally, you're coming from the peak path, because the peak pathway will cause this to happen. But when you say in a peak pathway sense, oh, I'm going to be doing more enumerating with this person, if that encounters 5 minutes or 50 minutes, that kind of is going to be a multitude. That's like saying, oh, I'm going to be more serious with them. Okay, serious is a very large concept. Now, does that mean nigh squinting? Does that mean zai steel face? There's a lot of things, physiological cues is what we're talking about, that would actually equate to that. In this case, we were actually using, this was before, we're using the words, the same word in two contexts. Characterizing and enumerating as a peak pathway strategy is a larger kind of thing, a larger, looser thing than characterizing or enumerating as a physiological cue, which is a very targeted, specific thing, such as, I don't like this. I gave a certain character in my voice. That's what's meant by that. Very specific, like right there, I just did it. Or like on our sessions, Act 1 is this, Act 2 is this, Act 3 is this. That's numerating, just a little snippet there. Although I could numerate or characterize as a general way I was teaching that class. So if you've seen, does that make sense? In a larger one.
Right. Absolutely, yeah.
But this theme, so far, we're working on the cues.
Right, you kind of forgot that this is all about Mojo reading cues right now.
It's okay, cues. Because they are related, and we did just come from the Under the Hood chapter or section right before this, so it makes sense we'll touch back. But it's important we understand that these here, where the cue is the star, the physiological cue that we're reading in this section. And Ben, it's still you, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But yeah, I think like as values-based mojos, we tend to like to, I mean, we do like the numerating that's like necessary, but then we like to sort of characterize more to relate back to the numerating. It's sort of, I mean, we can do both. You know, we can have times where we numerate a lot.
But this gets into the last.
It's more like natural state versus like altered state, I guess.
Exactly.
So we feel more comfortable characterizing, so naturally we're going to tend to do that, you know, more comfortably, and tend to prefer that. But of course, like, you do as much numerating as needed. Sometimes you just really got to like numerate a lot. So kind of, anyway. So numerating refers to when a person explains the numeric or logical sequencing of an activity or methodology, as well as breaking things down into its systemic groupings and so forth. This indicates that a person it corresponds to a person's logic-based power. So logic-based mojos have natural state numerating, and values-based mojos have altered state numerating.
Good, Glenn.
All right. So yeah, numerating refers to when a person is trying to explain things in a numeric kind of manner, or a logical sequencing kind of manner, breaking things down into smaller chunks that are systemic, and, you know, finding all kinds of groupings and stuff in order to like really get across the logical idea. When it comes to numerating, it's associated with logical power use. So whenever a person is using their logic-based power, or whenever they're doing numerating, they're using their logic-based power. Logic-based mojos have a natural state form of numerating, and values-based mojos have an altered state form of it.
Good. All right, next one for you, Glenn, here. It's a chunky one. What is perception range? How does it relate to perception power hierarchy? What is discernment range? How does it relate to discernment power hierarchy? And then how do the perception discernment ranges relate to each other?
All right. So the perception range is located mainly in the eyes. The perception power hierarchy is indicated by depth level in the eyes, with the momentum perception on top of and obscuring the modulation perception, which lies beneath. It only peeks out or pierces through during active use. The discernment range is located along the entire expanse of the face. The discernment power hierarchy is indicated by how easily and readily emotive expression goes above the midline of the face, or by how easily it is cessated. With the momentum discernment setting the baseline cast of one's countenance, and the modulation discernment either flaring up or curtaining down only during active usage. The perception range and discernment range have crossover in the eye area, which which energy field range takes precedence indicates whether a person is perception lead or discernment lead. That is quite meaty. All right, I'm going to see if I can do this one. Perception range, and yeah, okay. All right, so the perception range refers to the perception powers and which are located in the eye area, and depending on the perception power range, the momentum power perception power is going to be in the forefront, and then the modulation perception power is going to be in the background, only coming out or only peeking through or piercing through during active modulation power usage. When it comes to the discernment range, that refers to the overall emotive expressioning and neutralizing that takes place on a person's face, and the discernment power hierarchy is basically is referring to, like, if a values-based mojo is going to be using their values-based power, the emotive expression is going to be mostly above the midline of the face, and then when they use their logic-based power, it's going to be modulation use for them, and it's going to either flare up every now and then. But for the logic-based mojo, it would be the reverse, in that it will sort of cessate the emotive expressioning on their face.
You're focusing on the values-based, logic-based. This cue is focusing on perception versus discernment. It's kind of actually breaking down where bifield and unifield face comes from. I think it helps is if I talk this way. There's basically two ranges that are intersected. The first range is the perception range, and it's basically which perception power is up in front, and then almost like going into your head, like depth inward. Underneath is the secondary perception power, and so that's the range, sort of like the top of the eye and then below the eye. The discernment range actually goes up and down the face, and it can overlap the eyes or not overlap the eyes. If the discernment range overlaps the eyes, then it's a lead discerner. If the perception range is on top, so that this face range actually goes under the eye. So like for us as Naiji, our G technically, I guess, does go up, but it actually goes up behind the eyes, which is why you don't see it in there. Because the discernment range,
it goes.
This range here is on this range. This depth range is on top of the up and down range. For discerners, it's switched. Whether logic-based or values-based, the unifield comes to the fact that this range is on top of the eyes, which gives it that helmet quality or that veiled quality. Does that make sense?
Right. And then the perception range doesn't go up the entire face or below the face. It's in terms of depth in the eyes, right?
Yes. exactly.
I gotcha.
But then
Okay.
those two ranges, that's the last question. They do overlap, and either the eyes will be on top of this range, which gives the impression of a bifield face, or this range is over the eyes, which gives the impression of a unifield.
Right, right, right. I have to do that one again then.
No worries.
So in the last statement, it says the perception range and discernment range of crossover. Does that have to do with what you mentioned with the, like, even if your perception lead, the emoting, I guess it'll go behind the perception powers or something?
That's the kind of impression I get from when I'm trying to like describe what I'm seeing with, say, bifield and unifield. It appears that the eyes are like...
It isn't literally the case that the emoting has, like, isn't, like, it doesn't literally stop. It's just going behind the perception.
That's what it kind of feels like to me. But again, like I said, we'll need people to actually map this stuff, anatomically. And also,
it's interesting though, because like with discernment leads, like, would it also be the case that the perception powers are just in the eyes, even are just behind the discernment powers? I mean, because we can clearly see there's a significant amount.
That is what I'm saying, and that's what gives the veiled,
Yeah.
for example, towers. That's
but
what happens.
It's like more, but with like the discernment leads, you can see both more clearly, because I guess because like you like when it comes to like a perception lead, it's really hard to see the emoting in the eyes, like, at all. But like when you have a discernment lead, it's a lot easier to see the perception energy in the eyes, because the eyes just naturally, like, they always give off a significant
And I think
amount
it
of
has to
perception
do
energy.
with the depth in the perception. It seems like you can see them underneath the surface of the discernment, whereas because their depth, when the discernment range goes under them, you don't see them, which is why it gives that impression of bifield that they've cut off.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think, yeah, the values or the discernment range takes up a lot of breadth on the face, but it lacks the depth. Whereas
yeah, that makes sense.
Whereas the perception range has little breadth, but it has a lot of depth to it. So that's why it kind of like sticks out in that way. Yeah.
You can still, the eyes, you can still see under that kind of shallow topography. Whereas when the discernment goes under the depth of the eyes, it goes out of view.
Right. Because it's kind of a little bit more shallow on the skin.
The discernment,
in a certain kind of sense.
It's got more, exactly. It's got more range. It's a lot bigger visually, but the depth is not very much.
Correct. Okay, let me see if I can do this one again. So the perception range refers to the range of the perception powers in the eye, which is mainly concentrated in the eye area. And so the perception power hierarchy, see, I think that's what I'm getting tripped up on, is the hierarchy part.
Okay, on the depth, and the depth, right? There's going to be two depths. There's the depth that comes up to the surface, and then there's the depth beneath that. The momentum perception power is going to be on the surface.
Right. And then the modulation is going to be underneath.
Yeah, and it comes up from behind and either pierces through or peeks out.
You're right. So even within the perception range, there's going to be like the way the lens kind of like can contract or dilate. There's sort of like the perception powers can also kind of do something similar, where the main momentum power is usually the one that's always up front, but the other one can always come and peek through a little bit or pierce through if it's being actively taken into or actively used.
Active use brings it to the surface.
All right, so yeah. Okay. Then discernment range. Okay. So the perception range, right, has to do with basically the entire range in terms of depth of which is located in the eye area of the perception powers and the interplay that goes on between them. The power hierarchy between those two powers is distinguished by the momentum power being in the front and then the modulation power being in the back. And only when the modulation power is being actively used does it come out in the form of either a piercing quality or a peaking quality, depending on if it's what do you call it, a hunting power, the hunting power of Nir Vi, or the gathering power of Nir V. The discernment range refers to the entire range on the person's face of their discernment powers, and so if they have, if they're a, yeah, it has to do with the mode of expressioning of their, or how quickly their mode of expressioning goes up the face, or how quickly the neutralizing goes, or the cessation of the neutralizing or the emoting happens on the face, and the interplay between those two discernment powers, where for the values-based Mojo, it's going to be more on top, where they're going to be naturally more emotive, and then the logic-based, the neutralizing cessation is going to be more in the background. It's going to be concentrated in the, it's going to dictate how far up it goes up the face. The main discernment power is going to be dictating what's happening as far as the lead discernment being interplayed or being used first, and then the modulation one coming up only during active use. So if a person is a G alpha, they're going to have to actively use their Xi in order to clamp down their G a little bit, which is always going to still be peeking through or coming out, flaring up, but it's going to be, you know, heavily modulated by the Xi. The way in which the two powers, the two ranges, did I miss something?
No, I was letting you know you got that point, so you're ready just for the last bit now.
Okay, so when it comes to both ranges, the perception range as well as the discernment range, they have a crossover between them, which is the eye area, and that's basically the distinguishing factor of whether or not they're going to be a perception lead mojo or a discernment lead mojo, because the eyes of a perception lead mojo will stick out and be on top of the discernment range, which gives their, which makes it appear as though the discernment range is kind of like halting at the eye area, but it's not really halting. It's kind of going underneath the perception range area that's located in the eyes. Whereas for the discernment range mojo, it's going to be the opposite, where the entire face and the discernment range is going to be on top of the perception range, which is going to be underneath.
Good, got it. Cool. Thanks, Ben. Your last one, we'll call for night. That was good.
Cool. All right, so the perception range is located in the eye area, and the way that works is that the dominant perception power will be on top. It will be higher than the secondary perception power. So your momentum perception power will be, is depth-wise in the eyes, will be in front of your modulation perception power. Your modulation perception power, like the top perception power, will be visible like almost all the time, but because typically, I mean, there's going to be more momentum modulation typically, and then your modulation power will come on more during like active use. So that'll show up, although it's behind it, it'll show up more during those times. And then you have the discernment range, which, as opposed to being about depth in the face, is about breadth, and that goes along the entire expanse of a person's face. The discernment power, and also this determines how high a person's values-based power and logic-based power is in their psyche. It determines how high up their emoting goes. So for example, if a person is a knee's eye, their emoting will go up to the midline, but will effectively, that entire range will be in the will still be in the expanse of the face. For example, the cheeks, you'll see steel cheeks, and then behind the eyes, the discernment power spectrum will continue to go up. It'll just be behind the perception power, and these relate to each other. You know, as I briefly mentioned, in the eye area, they cross over. So, for example, like a G alpha, you'll see their G emoting. It'll go all the way up the face into the brow line. But then you'll see perception energy, even though their emoting also goes into the eyes, the perception energy will also be in the eyes. So there you have a crossover there. But depending on whether a person is perception lead or discernment lead will be indicated by which of the two energetic dichotomies is dominant. So if they're perception lead, you'll see the perception energy dominate the eyes. Whereas if they're a discernment lead, you'll see their top discernment power have a higher signal in the eyes, stronger signal.
Oh, got it. Nicely done. That was a chunky one and also subtle, but very important one. And the concept all goes together. That's what makes it so tricky. It's
I feel like that was a really fun one to do because, like, I felt like I wasn't relying so much on the specific wording. Like, I understood that. I felt like more like I was relying more on explaining the concept. So I actually enjoyed that one a lot. Like, because there were 3 different ones, there's no way I would remember the exact wording. So I just sort of took it more from the approach of trying to explain how it works. And I feel like that.
Yeah, you really needed to understand the concept and break it down as far as, like, you know, it's an entire range, right? Like the depth versus the, you know, like the breadth, and then like the momentum power being in the front, and then the modulation power being in the back.
Ready to go? What? Oh, we're right here ready now. Cool.
Right.
She's taking me somewhere. So
nice.
Cool. So is there anything else before we sign off?
Actually, yeah, Coach. I wanted to get you to maybe I wanted to recommend, or not recommend, but sort of like another sample to be read, possibly if it was like that one other guy. I already mentioned him, but actually I've been looking into this one other dude, and I was wondering if you.
I read him today, by the way. That guy's Najee.
Oh, okay, cool. That's awesome. But also, there's somebody from the fitness bubble that I'm kind of interested in, wanting to know what.
You go ahead and just put him on the read request thread, or just email me to me, and I'll make sure I get added in. I'm kind of turning over those read requests pretty rapidly these days.
Okay. I guess I could just tell you now, though. I mean, is it?
Okay. Well, okay. I'll write on my pad. So yeah. But it's just more efficient to email because I have it like digitally, and I won't ever lose it.
Okay. I don't know what to do now. I guess I'll just email you the guy then.
Okay. But sure. I'll get to it. Cool.
Sure. No problem. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, you got it. Glad to do it. Okay. Have a wonderful night, everyone, and I'll see you guys on Sunday.
All right.
All right. Have a good night, everyone.
And Ghost Rider Brothers, they actually got right, so good in casting.
Awesome.
Yeah.